Hey guys, I am down on a very sunny allotment today and finally spring has sprung. Look! Cherry blossoms, magnolias, daffodil, anemones, and Easter egg looking hyacinth, even though they're really short. And my muscari are coming too. Which is all great. I love to see the flowers coming, but I have learned that when you want to put an arrangement together and you have a cutting garden, you need more than just the focal flowers. You need more than the big showy flowers. You need a lot of foliage, and that is what I am down to plant today. For anyone that doesn't know, my name is Peggy and I am growing cut flower garden here on my allotment in Kanagawa Prefecture, Japan, which is just south of Tokyo in USDA Zone 9B. Thanks for checking out my channel. Okay, so the allotment garden that I am on now is bigger than my old one. My old one was only 3 meters by 4 meters, 4 meters by 5 meters. It was really small, and so I really focused on learning to grow flowers that I could use that looked the most impressive. But I quickly found that it's really hard to fill a big vase of beautiful, big blooming, kind of showy-offy flowers, your big focal flowers, and I needed to have some more foliage. But in such a small garden, it was really hard to give up that space for foliage. But now this garden is 6 by 6.5, so I have that little bit more room and I am going to be using it for foliage. Now I already have some greenery in here that I brought from the previous garden and that I have put in to grow. Okay, so in this little patch of kind of right at the very end, before you kind of hit all my gardening junk, I have put in some crimson clover. Now I grew this last year and I really liked it. It just looks like clover now, but it actually puts up kind of spikes with red fluffy stuff on them. And not only are the leaves good for the foliage, that makes a kind of nice grassy wispy stuff, and it's really good for drying, so I wanted to have more in. Also, it really bushes up, it doesn't take up much space, and it gives you a lot. And I put this in October and it's doing really well. I'm just waiting for it to actually give me some grassy bits that I can use. But this is going to be a big foliage as well as wispy bits for me. Over here I have my honesty or money plant or lunaria. And again, I planted this out in autumn and it is doing really well. And I'm hoping that I will get some off of this year. And again, this is really good for drying. So what I don't use for cut foliage, I can use for drying and putting in wreaths. I love this one. Okay, this is one that I learned about last year and I grew last year, and that is dill, and it smells so good. And again, I planted this one out in autumn and I was a bit worried that it was going to die back in the colder weather, but just this last week, now it's getting warm, it's really started to bush up. It smells amazing, it's got great greenery, and then it puts up big kind of umbel type flowers that are bright acid yellow that I really like for using in the spring. Can you see all my tulips coming as well? Not long till we get them. So this is doing really well. And then in front of that, although it's very hard to see, I do actually have some bronze fennel here. Now again, this didn't like the cold very much and has definitely died back, but it's not completely gone. I have, can we see? 1, 2, 3, 4, maybe 5 little puffs of that still going. So I'm really hoping that that's going to pick up the same way as the fennel does. And again, that's a really nice kind of fluffy foliage, but this one's much darker. It smells lovely. And then here I have the achillea. Now this is one that I transplanted from the old garden, so it went in already quite big and bushy, but it is doing really well, and I've got lots of little new shoots of that coming up as well. So again, this will be a really nice filler for me. I am looking straight into the sun, so I'm going to put on my sunnies. Okay, so that leaves me about 2.5–3 meters here that I am going to use all for foliage, and I'm really excited about it. So I've got some stuff that I've grown before and some stuff that I haven't. So stuff that I've grown before is my Ami. So this is Ami Magus. I grew this my first year and it didn't do very well. And I was really upset about that. I only got a few bits, and then it self-seeded last year, and the stuff that I could use I absolutely loved, but then I went away for most of June last year and this bloomed while I was away, and so I missed most of it. But the little bits that I got to use I was really happy with, and again, it's a great one for drying, so I'm really excited to try and get this in my garden and hope that it does better than the first year that I grew it. This one gets quite tall though, so I think I'm going to put it next to my fennel, which also gets quite tall. So that's going to be my first one that goes in, and I'm going to put mostly this in because I can use it for cutting and for drying. Another tall one that I'm putting in is one that I haven't grown before, and honestly I'm not really sure what it's called. Kia Roji. It's kind of like a pink fluffy grass. Now, I've tried to grow a few grasses before. I grew bunny tails, which I really liked, and again were good for drying, but they were quite short, and I've figured out there's a difference between bunny tails and hare's tails, and it's the hare's tails that I want, but I can't find the seed for that, so I can't get it. Also, that's a biennial, so I don't really want to give up the space in the garden to have to wait 2 years for it to bloom because I am too impatient. So I looked for another kind of wispy, filly-outy, grassy, and I thought that one looked really pretty. So I'm going to put some of this in and hope that it does well. I then have some Cerinth. Now, I have seen other florists use this, and I really, really like it. It's the dark colouring that I like that will go a lot with. I've got my dark cornflower. My dark tulip will probably have gone by then, but I have quite a lot of dark coloured purpley flowers in my garden, so I think that that will be a really nice foliage to go with that. And as you can see, this one's really good for the pollinators as well. And then I have some clary sage, which smells lovely. I've had some of this in my garden before, as in my home garden in pots. Not really used it for cutting though, used it for cooking. So I'm excited to get this one in the garden to be able to cut from it as well. So these are the 4 that I'm going to be putting in today. Now, 2.5, 3 meters-ish for 4 types of plants should be okay, right? But no, I want more in there. There's just some things that I can't plant. It's supposed to say until May. If I read the seed packets, it says start planting these out at May. It's 23 degrees today. Now, when I say that spring comes on my allotment fast, I mean it. We had 3 days of snow last week, and I'm out here in short sleeves and it's 23 degrees today. The change is pretty drastic, so I'm not sure that I will actually leave it until May to get things started, but I'll leave it a bit longer than this. And that is going to be some pink pokers, which I've grown before and I really liked it, although weirdly all of my pink pokers came out white. I had white pokers. Now, they still look lovely, they still dried really nicely, and I used a lot of them in wreath making, but I don't know why they weren't pink. If you know why my pink pokers turned white, please let me know. I don't. So I'm going to have some more pink pokers in. I also have some ornamental purple basil. Now, I grew this last year in my garden and I absolutely loved it, and it had such a good vase life, which I did not expect at all. You know, usually you use basil for cooking, and if it's in your fridge it doesn't last very long, or if you buy like the little clump from the supermarket, you know, they always die really quickly. But this one actually lasted really, really well in the vase, and I loved it, and it lasted right until the end of the season. So I was pairing it with my chrysanthemum at the end of the season, and those really rich dark colors looked absolutely beautiful. So I will be putting in some more of that, and I have some gomphrena as well. Now, I've grew gomphrena my first year as well, and it grew like a weed. It was amazing. It just kept pumping out more and more and more. Again, it was great for drying, although I do find that it loses its color a little bit after it's dried for a while, but it was really good. And I only had 3 plants in, and that was too much. I couldn't keep up with it. I was cutting it almost every day, and it just kept giving and kept giving and kept giving, and it gets really big and bushy. So I know that just a couple of plants of that won't take up much room in the garden, but will give me a really, really good crop that again lasted. It was one of the last things I was cutting out of the garden. So in the next month, couple of weeks, I'm going to be planting those 3 as well. But that means that I have 7 things to go in here, and I'm not sure how that's going to work out. Okay, so all of these packets say that I should be planting these 30 centimeters apart, and for once I'm actually going to listen, because I have learned that with the foliage plants, I want them to get big and bushy. I'm going to be cutting the foliage back off them, and I want them to bush out more and more and more. So I am actually going to put these the recommended distance apart. I reckon I'm going to do 2 rows of each of these, and then for my gomphrena and my basil and my pink pokers, I'll just do 1 line of each of those, because I know that they produce so well. But also, this row is currently where all of my spring flowers are. This is my sweet pea, daffodil, muscari, hyacinth, ranunculus anemone, and my viola and pansy are all in here. And these are all going to be done pretty soon. These are all spring flowers. So my plan is that once these are gone, I can plant some of my autumn seeds in here. So I'm going to have some bergamot, which again is going to be used more as a filler. I'm going to have my African marigolds in here, and then this will be all of my zinnia as well. But I don't think I need that much bergamot or the marigolds. I'm growing the marigolds as an experiment. I don't really like marigolds. I don't like the smell of them. So I'm not going to fill this with them just in case I don't like them. I'm just seeing if I can grow them and seeing if I like the ones that come. So I might have a little bit more space here to put in a second planting, or the ones that I decide I want more of, maybe the opal basil, I can put more of that in here. Also, the row behind this is supposed to be my poppy, and I'm really upset that my poppy haven't done much this year. Now, when the poppy, and I've got cornflower and nigella in there as well, if the cornflower and nigella die back in the summer, which is what they usually do, I'm planning on putting my amaranth in there, which will be a filler for the autumn time. So that's all that I've got going in there though, is my amaranth. Yeah, so if the poppy don't really do much, then I have quite a big space there as well that I can fill up with some of these other foliages that come in late. So I'm going to give my poppy another couple of weeks and see how they do, and then decide if I'm actually going to go ahead and put the purple basil or the pink poker in there instead. And so I'm pretty happy with that spacing of 2 rows of each of these. Yeah, let's do that. So as always, I am going to prep my soil first. I am going to use my pitchfork just to loosen up the soil without turning it. I don't like to turn the soil. I'm just going to loosen it up, help with compaction and get some more air into it. I'm then going to rake in a little bit of compost to make sure that I am putting some nutrition into the soil before I start. A lot of these seeds are really small and they really don't need to be deep into the soil at all, about 1/2 inch. I think the deepest one's about 1.5 inches. So I am going to go ahead and pre-water this soil just so that they don't get washed away later when I try and water it after they're in the ground. So pre-water the soil and then your seeds are going to stay where you put them. My big sister Vari bought me new gardening gloves for Christmas. Check these out, like cat's claws. How good are they? Thanks, Vari. These are only going in about these are only going in about 1/2 centimetre deep, really not deep at all. Easy. Next up, I'm going to do my cerinthe. Now these seeds are closer to what you'd expect in a sweet pea seed. They're much easier to handle and much bigger. So I'm just going to pop a couple of these into each hole, again 30 centimetres apart. And the seedling will look like this. These need to go in the deepest. These need to go about 1.5 centimetres. Generally, the bigger the seed is, the deeper it goes. I like to plant them in 3s. 1 for the earth, 1 for the crow, and 1 to grow. That is not 30 centimetres. Okay, next up is my kind of pink fluffy grass, and these seeds are tiny and you do not get very many of them at all. Wow. But I'm hoping because this is the grass, it's going to bush out a lot. So I'm only going to put 2 in each row. So 4 plants in total and give them a little bit more space. Lastly, I have my Ami, and this seed is so small. It's tiny. I mean, you get a lot of it, but I mean, you don't want to be planting this on a windy day. And this just needs the slightest covering of soil. I'm just literally going to scratch the soils, sprinkle it in, and then cover it up a little bit, but firm it down because they could blow away. They're so tiny. And that's me all done because it's pre-watered. I don't need to water it again. So that is everything in, and hopefully this is going to give me a really solid full season length of foliage. I've got my dill and my fennel, my maybe some sweet william I could use as foliage if I can get that to come up any quicker. My cornflower for the spring and my crimson clover. I'm then going to have this stuff, so that's cerinthe, Ami, clary sage, What else did I just plant? Pink fluff, but I don't think that's going to come up till autumn. My opal basil and my gomphrena for the summer months, and then gomphrena, my amaranth and honesty for the autumn is the plan. If you want to follow along and see how all of this stuff does, then please remember to hit the subscribe button below. If you want to see what I did last year and what I do with all of the flowers that I cut, you can check out my Instagram, which is From the Witch's Garden. There's a link to that below as well. And I will see you guys next week. Bye.